I have a lot of clients sometimes, especially in the markets that we're in, where people are kind of waiving inspections unless it's something, this, that, or otherwise. The problem is little things that I see might be big things that they don't see. So not only are you buying the inspection where you're saying, okay, well, we're in good shape, we're in bad shape, but you're buying in case I missed it, I'm the one who's now going to replace it problem. So on top of knowing what you're dealing with kind of a situation, you're also selling off or sharing that liability. And it's just nice being able to walk someone through who, might not know what they're looking at or might see something they think is horribly worrisome, and then we can explain like this is not problematic, this is not a deal breaker.
In a market defined by uncertainty, where every second counts, one opportunity can change everything. Welcome to the Dream is Real podcast.
Welcome to the Dream is Real podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Billie Clark. Before we get started, please be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. This show is all about giving you the insights you need, whether you are an agent or a consumer. Our guest is a trusted real estate professional dedicated to helping others, sellers, and investors make informed decisions through comprehensive property inspections. Ryan Farrelly, owner of 5D Home Inspections, serves clients throughout New York and New Jersey, providing detailed home inspections designed to uncover potential issues, identify safety concerns, and give clients confidence before making one of the largest investments of their lives. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm well. How about yourself?
Thank you. Very good. You came all the way from Staten Island.
I did this morning, yeah.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
Fantastic. Tell us how you began.
So I began, my aunt is a realtor in New Jersey. She had been for years. So 7 years ago now, I guess I was just kind of talking to her, just looking for the next thing to do. I was a landlord. I've done property management. I was in law enforcement for a very long time. And she pointed out, she's like, oh, why don't you look into home inspections? And I wasn't into it, at the beginning of it. I had, really no idea what they did. I knew I didn't want to fix anything. And then as soon as I learned that I could just point out the problems, and that was the end all be all, that was it for me. So I get to do the investigative part, but I never have to touch a hammer. So it's
interesting.
Perfect for me, yeah.
So you love what you do.
I do. I really do enjoy it.
So what is most challenging about your position?
My position, the most challenging thing is when I come across problems that I don't have a solution for. So a lot of times with our indoor air quality testing, we're trying to solve a client's problem. They have headaches, they have maybe a medical issue they're trying to chase out, and we'll come in and we'll do our VOC testing, and we'll do in-depth air quality measurements, do all the research, do all the lab testing, and it comes back unremarkable. Right. So it's sad, or it's difficult in the respect that we are trying to locate the problem, and we just didn't get there with this. And they could just move on to something else, and it could be something completely unrelated. But it's difficult sometimes when you're trying to help somebody and you run into a position where I don't have an answer for you.
Right.
So that's one of the more difficult areas of our job. Home inspection wise, I gotta say, when I find like a deal killer moment, because when you have an excited client, they're ready to move in, we're usually, close to the end of the line there, and we find something catastrophic, and just, you gotta walk away from this. It doesn't happen often, only a handful of times in my career, but when it does happen, it's, it's a little heartbreaking for people.
Of course, yeah. I had a question to the prior, to the challenging.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, do people actually go to their doctor and the doctor says to them, call up an inspector?
Yeah, we do.
Do they do that?
We do get referrals from doctors. The clients get referrals from doctors.
Wow.
We have townships that'll refer us. Indoor air quality, it's a lot more than just what people think. Like, there's particulate matters, there's chemical off-gassing through everything in your home. So without intention, you could have an environment that might not be suitable or ideal for human beings. Yeah. Not saying it's toxic or it's bad, but some people, like allergies, are more sensitive to things. They might get a respiratory response from a VOC increase that others wouldn't. So when you're trying to find something that you might not have an answer for you have these problems when you're in your house, but miraculously when you leave your home, you feel better. These are the types of situations where we can come in and say, all right, well, we don't know what we're looking for, but let's at least see if something is off. Let's see if we can find something wrong.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. We're going to get into air quality, because that's very important for homeowners to understand that, to call you up.
Yeah.
Because you'll come throughout the year, if there's any issues. My next question is, what do you enjoy most about helping buyers and homeowners?
I mean, I like helping people, and it's kind of just been my thing since, even when I was a kid. Like I said, I was a first responder. I was in law enforcement for a long time. being a home inspector for me, each job is different. So every day I get up, it's not the same. So I get that, the interest is always there. It's always a fresh start.
Yeah.
So that's always a fun time. And it's just nice being able to walk someone through who, might not know what they're looking at or might see something they think is horribly worrisome. And then we can explain, like, this is not problematic. This is not a deal breaker. And to be able to inform my clients, what they're dealing with. And that gives them what they need to move forward, with their transaction once they leave me.
Lovely. And what's one lesson that you've learned from inspecting hundreds of homes?
If you don't know, just say you don't know. Very early on, I had an issue where I said it was a water line or something. I claimed that it was this or that. I was incorrect, but instead of just saying, hey, I can't tell, I just took an educated guess.
Yeah.
That ended up costing, several $1,000s, but that's why you buy, home inspector. I'm buying your liability. So if you bring me in and I miss it, if that problem arises, that problem is my problem, not yours.
Oh, wow. So you end up spending
I end up spending my money. And that's a lot of times what people don't realize, especially with ancillary services like a sewer scope, for instance. Not only are you buying the inspection where you're seeing, okay, well, we're in good shape, we're in bad shape, but you're buying in case I missed it, I'm the one who's now going to replace it problem. So on top of knowing what you're dealing with kind of a situation, you're also selling off or sharing that liability.
Yeah, because it's all on you.
If that falls on me. If I mess up, I mess up. I take blame there.
We're all human.
That's it. We're all human.
But it costs us.
We're all human. It just costs us something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Dream Select Bootcamp app helped me pass my real estate exam and continues to help me to this day as a new agent. The AI mentor comes in clutch at open houses. Sign up today. You won't regret it.
And what are the biggest misconceptions buyers have about home inspectors?
I think the biggest misconception is that we're there to check every possible thing. It's unfortunate there's no way to do that. So there's what's called representative amount. I opened 30% of the windows because I can't get to the other 70%, or it would just, it would be impractical to try to do that. Yeah. So we're not there necessarily to find every nick and cosmetic issue, or there's a little line here, or a little crack here. We're trying to find the things that are going to be problematic that would have them talk to their team prior to moving forward. So I'm looking for problems that require solutions outside of maybe a DIY or a handyman situation. So that's primarily what our focus is on.
And who do you rely on? You're the owner of 5D, but who do you rely on?
So my inspectors are key. So when we divvy out work to different people, like the inspectors we choose to work with are ones that I would trust doing my own home, or that I've gotten referrals through realtors and I've seen their work. Being able to rely on people that fall outside of my scope. For example, I don't do sewer or septic inspections, that's a very complex system, but it's key finding people that I trust to then say, look, I have this septic, can you come and inspect it for me? So over the years, building up those relationships to, to have the arsenal to say, all right, I have this and I have a person, I have this, I have a person. Being able to build those teams, I think, is key. That's, made us successful.
Thank you. Wonderful. And what should a buyer realistically expect from an inspector report?
So I'm biased here because I'm selling the services, but when you're buying a house, I recommend just get everything checked. We do mold screenings, a sewer in scope. It's one of those things where this could possibly be a $7-8 million purchase to shave off maybe $100 here, $200 here. It sounds big at the time when you're booking that. You're right at the last steps of purchasing this home. Get everything checked because you want to find out if you have a damaged sewer line before you close, not 2 weeks after you close. And I mean, that goes with new homes too. Like, you should always have your property inspected before taking ownership, because it's a lot easier to have those problems corrected before you sign on the dotted line. Once you sign, those problems are now your problems.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is very important. And going back to the money.
Yeah, that's it.
What are they expecting?
So
depends on the situation.
Yeah, it depends on our, home inspections, range anywhere from, they start, in the mid 500s and they can go into the thousands depending on, if you're doing well water testing and there's septic system issues, or, there's a plethora of reasons that can cause, price increase to go up. Yeah. My advice is, though, to just weigh out the options. So I use Sewer Scope only because it's a great example of, maybe a $300 service that, if you find a problem, is always going to be in the thousands. And it's not even, people think, well, it's just a pipe. It's not necessarily just the pipe. It's the pipe runs through your basement, under your front lawn, under the sidewalk. So, It's getting to the pipe, repairing the pipe, and then putting it all back together. So things like sewer scopes or, underground tank surveys, it's a win-win situation. It either gives you the knowledge that, hey, I have nothing to worry about and you never have to think of it again, or,
Right.
hey, there's a problem, let's address this before we move to closing. So when it comes to inspection services, it's sometimes foolish to kind of skip things when, like you said, this is one of the biggest purchases of a lot of people's lives. Like, you should
course.
probably get it checked to the best of your abilities prior to
You have to
doing
know
it.
what you're doing, and you have to find the right person
And that's
to
it.
do it.
And
you know?
that's the problem. Unless you test, you don't know what you're dealing with. So,
Wow. Thank you. And what are some red flags that buyers should never ignore?
see, these are hard because it varies, but a lot of times if they don't know what they're looking at, like I have a lot of clients sometimes, especially in the markets that we're in, where people are kind of waiving inspections unless it's something, this, that, or otherwise. The problem is little things that I see might be big things that they don't see. So where I see, maybe some bowing or a little flex, it could be nothing. And I could say, listen, this is not an issue. This is something that's easily correctable. Or it could be, hey, this is missing something structurally important and you really need to, take a break and, hold off here. So I think the biggest red flag is, if you don't know, or if as a buyer you don't know, is trying to point out those red flags, because a lot of that's the reason you're bringing me in, is because I could find the red flags. If you could find the red flags, you wouldn't need, us to do it.
Yeah.
So trying to, WebMD yourself, or, try to figure things out on your own, I think that's probably the biggest red flag. Is if you don't know, ask somebody who knows. Because like I said, once you sign on that dotted line, like whatever problems that you thought you had an understanding of are now yours, whether you're right or wrong.
Do you recommend somebody getting a second opinion? Because I'd be afraid, like, the guy would just wave off, the inspection. You're like, yeah, we went through it,
And that's a lot of times. And for as a home inspector, our scope is limited. I'm not a structural engineer. I have the experience to say, look, there's something not right here, and I recommend you get this checked by, a structural engineer prior to moving forward.
Okay.
But the most I could hope for is that my clients follow my advice. I'm there for them. I'm not there for the realtor. I'm not there for the seller in that situation. Like, my entire existence in this transaction is to protect my buyer. And that's what we like to do. We like to make sure they're going forward with the knowledge they need to make the best decision they can,
Sure. Thank you so much for that. It's
Yeah.
essential to know that. Let's get back into air quality.
Yeah.
I like that very much, because I was doing my research, and according to the CDC, more than 400 people perish from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah.
So I think it's very safe to have somebody like you to come in and inspect. And, if they're feeling headache, fatigue, congestion,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, besides the common cold,
Yeah.
it's very important to have you come in. So what do you do in that circumstance?
So it varies. So we branched off. Our indoor air quality testing is kind of taken on its service of its own. It exceeds what as a realtor, you might have your client get an air quality test. And I say that with quotes because it is an air quality test, but it's more of a screening just to make sure you're not, let's say, purchasing a home with a major mold problem. So we can just say, hey, this is another test that we perform just to give you the peace of mind.
Yeah.
Our indoor air quality testing kind of steps that up several notches. So we're no longer just haphazardly saying, let's see if we can find mold here. We're usually coming in because of a situation. There's an odor that a client can't quite figure out. They're having respiratory issues, headaches that, a lot of times might go away once they leave the house for a couple hours. So it starts to be known to them that when they're home, when they're in a certain situation, like they're starting to feel these symptoms. And once you can kind of put that together, we can then just, start from there to say, what are we dealing with? Is it respiratory? And through, a gauntlet of tests ranging from VOCs to particulate matter to, pollutants that are in the air, we can at least say, all right, well, this is what's in the air. This is what we could say might be attributing to this, but at least it starts us on a right direction. So, when you go into a basement and you feel that heaviness of the air, you normally shouldn't feel the air. So when you're aware of it, if you're aware of an odor or a heaviness or
like a mist,
like
right?
a dent, a dense feeling you feel that
Yeah.
it doesn't feel different, but it doesn't feel right. Like, that is something. It's not your imagination. It might not be, bad. It might not be toxic, but it is something that you're feeling.
Yeah.
And whether you're having a response to that or it's just curiosity or you want to remedy it, the first step there is to be able to go in and say, look, this is what we have. This is what the parameters are and this is what we're looking at, now we could say our best bet moving forward is going to be this, or this. But unless we know what you're looking at, it's hard to find a solution.
Sure, and sometimes it can come from the furniture too.
And that's it. We found for formaldehyde VOC is one of the most sensitivity, and a lot of people don't have a sensitivity to it. But I've run across people that because our equipment is calibrated to lab quality standards, not we're not Amazon purchasing here, so we're down to parts per billion, and there's people with sensitivities that 99% of people won't have an effect to, but that small percentage can't figure out why they feel a certain way, and it could be the furniture they purchased last week, but you're not going to know those numbers exist. You're not going to know those chemicals are present in the air without that testing.
Right, exactly. You got to invest a
invest
a little bit.
Unfortunately, that's what it is, and it's like sometimes it's hard to we're just trying to figure out what's in the air, but that's the first step of it. Unfortunately, we can't offer solutions or directions blindly without knowing what we're dealing with. And as the homeowner, as the person in that environment, it's good for you too. If you're spending 8 hours, think of the amount of time you're in your home, ensuring you have a good, clean environment that isn't causing problems like that, or even if it isn't, but you just want to make it a little better, having those numbers to say we started here and now we're here is just, always invaluable information.
Do you inspect apartments as well?
We do, yeah, we do.
Okay.
We definitely inspect apartments.
Nice.
We do lofts. We're in, buildings. We're all over the place. So
Fantastic.
sometimes the parameters change on how we test,
Yeah.
Given the space, but we'll test anything for you.
Lovely. Let's talk about the thermal imaging that you have.
So our thermal imaging, a lot of guys have been using this for a long time. It's a huge time saver. That's primarily where we come across in home inspections because it allows us to see things much faster than if we had a feel. So a perfect example that I use all the time is radiant flooring. So, if you're not familiar, radiant flooring is just a tube of hot water that's below your floor. Unfortunately, if one of those pipes are leaking, you don't really find out about it until the floor starts to soak up that water.
Yeah.
So being able to look at a floor and be like, oh wow, everything is operational. To be able to look under a sink and say, look, there's no hot water dripping. We do take it one step further. We have drones with thermal imaging on it. So it's almost like an episode of Cops. Like it just kind of flies around and I can see, the thermal imprint of the home. It doesn't necessarily point to any problem or anything that we're looking for specifically. It's just a little bit more information that sometimes is useful for us as an inspector once we go into the home to be like, oh, we saw this on this imaging, maybe let me take another look over here. So it's been an invaluable tool,
It's a useful
moving forward.
tool, yeah.
And that's what it is. It's just another tool in the toolbox when we're looking for things. It's not magic. You can't see through walls. It doesn't just point out problems, but just like a flashlight, it's just one more thing we can grab to when we're trying to put together, the whole situation. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I wanted to go through this too because I think it's very important for civilians to know.
Yeah. Then that's what it is. It's just using a variety of tools, techniques that have grown over the years. The way sewer scoping works now is literally you have a fiber optic camera that just goes right down your sewer line. So it's a lot of these things have changed and for the better.
Thank you so very much. Yeah. And what are the most common issues that you find during inspections?
So a lot of times with inspections, we don't find necessarily a lot of problems. Okay. It's what we find is, unless it's a newer home, is the DIYs over the years. So the house was built in 1950, for example, and it was changed in 1970. And then again, and a room was added here, and then this change and that change. And with every iteration and every replacement, there's not necessarily permits filed. There's not necessarily, clean work done. So by the time 2026 comes, we're looking at everybody who's touched everything in the last bunch of years. So you do find a lot, for the most part, miswired outlets, small leaks here and there. You don't necessarily find the big things all the time, which is phenomenal. You never want to give that kind of information. But, just the house existing and being worked on over the years, things start to fail. The GFCIs, for example, in your bathroom, they stop, working. They just weren't replaced, 15 years ago when they needed to be. So a lot of times our reports, if there is nothing remarkable on there, it turns more into a punch list of things that, once you buy the house, hey, this is where I could start just to do the repairs that need to get done type situation.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to a homeowner doing what you've done, like throughout the years fixing? What can they do so they're not, they save time and money at the end? So
the biggest thing, in my reports, everything is hire somebody qualified. So something like as simple as the gutters. So I'll say, look, your gutters are, full, empty your gutters. Seems simple. Reach in, take it out, throw it. That's not the problem. Maybe your gutters are 24 feet off the ground and you're uncomfortable being on a ladder. So my reports are telling you, find the person who's comfortable doing this work, not necessarily that it's hard. So advice to homeowners is just make sure they don't exceed their limits. And, YouTube is not always the best teacher on how to do things.
Yeah.
Especially when those things, involve, maybe a heavy price tag to repair. If you're not an electrician, maybe learning how to do electrical work on the internet, maybe you're good at it, maybe you're not. But my recommendation is always, if you're not confident, hire somebody or at least find someone to, guide you better than just, hey, I think I can put this together on my own type situation.
Don't call Uncle Tony.
Yeah,
I have Uncle Tony.
and that's it. Like everybody knows a guy who does this. Find the guy, but if you're not comfortable, don't start sticking things in electrical panels. Just make sure you know what you're doing before you start doing what you're doing.
I totally agree. I agree with that. Are there any inspection myths that you like to debunk?
I think where we have like an ability to predict and find everything. I actually just had a client 2 days ago call me. House was great shape. It's a classic good bones house. It just hasn't been updated. And their heating and air conditioning systems were 35 plus years old, still working as they should. But they're looking for guidance to say, well, is this going to last me another 5 years? And it's just not something I could predict. I could tell you, I was there on Tuesday and it works great. I could tell you, I've seen heating systems in the 90-year-old range that are still operational, just because they've been maintained. But there's no predictability there. There's no, hey, you're gonna have to replace this next year, or 5 years or 10 years. It's just more or less, I could tell you what you have. You have to do the cost analysis here. Like, I can't tell you where you want to put your money. If you have this, and this wrong, I can't say, you should replace your windows now. Oh, then your heat died tomorrow. So it's like, we can't predict that, and no one can really predict that. We can just tell you what you're working with, and with that information and with the detailed information, my clients are armed to then go to the professionals, to go to the HVAC people and say, look, this is my problem. What's my replacement cost? Because we're providing them with real unbiased information. Like, we don't offer any recommendations either. I don't have anyone in my back pocket to say, oh, look, your heating's bad, call this person, which, it actually annoys my clients a bit because they would like some direction. But I remove, I like to be able to say ethically, I have absolutely zero connection with this home, anything to do with it after this report. I'm not trying to pass you off to the next person who's then gonna, fix that roof or fix that heater, because I just don't like having that even slight possibility that there could be an ethical dilemma there. So I give you the best information I can, and then hopefully you can move forward with that and, do whatever it is that you need to do.
They're so vulnerable, I believe. They're so in such a vulnerable state. They just want help.
That's it. It's a vulnerability. If you don't know, if you don't know anything about a home or ownership or maintenance or systems, it's difficult when you're reading a report to read, hey, look, this is 35 years old. The life expectancy is like 12 to 18 years old. It's still going, but I can't tell you when it's going to die. So they'll have, they'll ask the question, well, how long do you think you have? And I don't know. And that's unfortunate, but no one's going to know. It's just one of those things that exist. So we can give you the information that is present, when we inspect, but there's no predictability there. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest myth that we can just kind of go through and be like, oh no, this is good. This is fine. That's going to be good. You don't have to worry about this. So it's more information gathering than anything else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I would love to have you as my inspector because you're so kind and compassionate.
Yeah, anytime. That's what I hope for.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Dream Select Realty. This is Melissa Billie Clark reminding you the dream is real.